Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. I'm Manir Dan Ali, and my guest today is Hajia Saudatu Mahdi, a veteran of women advocacy and a former school principal, also a former registrar at a state polytechnic, but she's made a name on advocating for women. Indeed, she is one of the founders of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. That is the one to do with the Chibok girls, some of which are still missing. Hajia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Malam Manir, and it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Maybe we should start from the Bring Back Our Girls issue, because we can see how many years, something that happened in 2014.
Yes.
We are in 2022. It happened in April, and we are in November or thereabout of 2022, and still a lot of these girls are missing. And now it is like off the radar.
Well, thank you very much for at least even raising it now as an opening salvo for our discussion on women's rights and the protection of women and girls in Nigeria. Still says it's a topical issue, and also people have remained conscious about it. It's precisely 8 years and about, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, about 6 months, 8 years, 6 months since these girls have gone missing. For whatever one would want to say, aspirations are likely to be said, dashed. We had hoped that maybe, given the fact that there was so much around, first of all, the validation of their being abducted,
Yes.
then the engagements around bringing them out, what government should do, what others should do, which basically informed the beginning of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Before then, we had had Buniyadi. Before then, we had had abductions left, right, and center from communities. But in one fell swoop, 279 girls were taken away in the hours of the night. And that was too much for mothers. That was too much for advocates like me. And that is why former Honorable Minister Obi Ezekwesili, Hadiza Bala Usman, Mariam Uwais, and my humble self got together to say, no, this cannot be business as usual. We've got to say something. And it is only mothers who feel it that can. So, and that's how essentially we started the Bring Back Our Girls campaign.
And to some extent, you could say you've succeeded in the sense that
Absolutely.
a large number of those girls,
yes,
it took years,
yes,
have been found,
yes,
and now they seem to still be trickling
in.
But I don't know, because I wonder how mothers will feel after all these years when your girl went missing and now she's returning back with 2 or 3 children,
yes,
from people who are more like enemies.
Yes. Actually, Malam Manir, even in the beginning, I think in the 4th year, I was privileged to make a presentation in Spain. And I had an arithmetic around what could be possible within the 2 years. And honestly, I don't know how I managed the figures, and that is where we are today. At that time, give and take the calculations of what will come, what cannot come, we had a situation where we were looking at about 100 who may remain missing for 4 reasons. First of all, that they may have been dispersed and traded, more or less, to other insurgents. They may have tried to escape or have gone into some oblivion that probably will not. They may have died. But most worrisome, which we couldn't really grapple with, was the fact that some of them could have become acclimatized. Not necessarily converted, yes, but acclimatized and assimilated into the system of insurgency, probably out of despondency, expectation that they would have been rescued, they have not been. The realization that this may be the end of it for us, this is the road, so we might as well make comfort with what is available. And most importantly, that people, after some time, a human being begins to disconnect from the comfort zone or from the original zone.
But have you made any effort since the ones, especially the recent one that the military keeps saying 2 have been found, 3, 5?
Yes, yes.
Have you made effort to see whether they have been reintegrated back into their families and how easy or difficult that has been?
Yes, again, I'm privileged to be a special assistant to the chairman of the Nigerian Victim Support Fund. And under that umbrella, we have been able to follow through some of these girls at the AUN, that's American University of Nigeria in Yola. We've also been able to follow up some of them who are in other countries.
That's the ones who were released much earlier.
Much earlier.
Not the recent
The ones that are trickling in.
Yes.
Get assimilated back because nobody would discard or would
you mean that Hausa saying of you can't cut off your hand?
Yes,
even if it
yes, more or less. You can't dismiss the fact that when they appear, you get relieved, you get closure. Because a lot of these parents...
But they come with a baggage.
They come with a baggage. Even as at 2018, 2019, some of those who were in American University had babies that they left with their mothers in the village. So first, I think, going back to your question, do we have an idea of those of them who have come, whether they are reintegrated or they're accepted? Yes, we do. And it is only human that their parents will be happy no matter what excess baggage they come with. They will also be relieved and they will have closure. Of course, they will live with the pain. You live with the pain of not knowing. When we were in the thick of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, I happened to travel to Katsina. And after Subuhi prayer, there was a sheep whose 2 earrings were away from her, and she was going round and round and round. So I actually came out of the room to check what was she looking for. And then when I realized it was her child, I brought it, and I just broke down. This is an animal.
Exactly.
So coming back to, are they reintegrated? Yes, they will be reintegrated. It's only a natural factor of relief. And of course, you live with the burden.
But then why isn't there so much effort to free the more recent ones? Because they are the ones of Birnin Yauri. The Birnin Yauri, yes, which happened about a year ago, yes, at the Federal Government College. And now it's only the parents that appear to still remember that their children are there. I think recently there was some audio online, yes, which is suggesting that some of they may have been married up and maybe have had a child or so since it's 1 year since their case happened. Well,
I think while not standing brief for government or not standing brief for any other effort that is being made, you would have to admit that the experience from around the world around abductions, kidnapping, and general criminality that takes human people away from their comfort zone and from their original settings is something that has a life of its own. There will be an initial uproar, then there will be a settling down, and then there will be a realization. So what do we do, or what can we say that gives us comfort as parents, as advocates, is that such situations as we have having this discussion with you keeps the matter on the table, keeps government accountable, or tells government it is still accountable, and gives parents some hope and then some soothing that all is not lost.
But is it because the numbers are not much? Because in the case of the Birnin Yauri, it's just about a dozen of the girls that are still there with the abductors, and most Nigerians don't seem to know of their even case, unlike the case of the Chibok girls.
Yes, with all pain and regret, I beg to say that I think Nigerians are becoming acclimatized to criminality.
They're becoming numb to it.
They're becoming numb and accepting it as a norm. Numb because of the helplessness of the situation. A lot of times people would ask, why can't government storm those places? I was, again, privileged one time to have a discussion on this. And the first thing I was made to understand was that a lot of times governments are afraid collateral damage will happen. Secondly, as a country, we were not used to these things. We were not. We knew armed robbery. We knew mass actions of, of discontent, but we didn't know a situation where human beings become the instruments of aggression. And this is where we found ourselves. And as we went through from 2014 to date, it is not only deepened, but it is happening on a daily basis. So you really want to say it's an everyday event now to the average Nigerian.
I think this weekend there was the case of the Mairua abductions, which ended in a way happily, because the children who were just laborers on a farm were said to have all been released, like 21 of them.
Yes, one thing also you need to take on board in this discussion, Malam, is that it is not expected that it all ends well.
Well, probably that's why some were talking of storming the place, like it happened in Beslan, which is a school in Russia, that terrorists
But
invaded.
You knew the collateral damage that was recorded.
Heavy collateral damage, but then there was closure.
There was closure. I think that's where we should really be heading. At what point can we hope as Nigerians to get closure? Or no? Look at the train disaster. The Kaduna train disaster. So,
but now there's a closure already. The government is talking of reopening that line and all of that, and of course,
but does that does that clean the pain that people live with? Does that clean the fear?
Not necessarily, but at least that chapter probably may have been closed. It's a difficult subject to deal with, but still, Nigerians will expect this as a minimum, probably from the government and also from the civil society groups like yours that are keeping these things alive.
Yes. Yes, government will have to remain at the center of accountability, because that's their primary job. Their primary function as a government, in line with Chapter 2 of the Constitution, is safety and security of lives and properties of Nigerians. So we'll continue to drum into that. And also, because this whole thing is now muddled between clear aggressions and complex criminalities, it is getting difficult for even government to discern and even respond. Again, the form of response in the beginning was also another factor that probably muddled up things, to the extent that by the time you started speaking of maybe we got 80 back, in 2015, 2016, we got about 80 back. And then a lot of the parents have started, finding their own ways. They're in communication. But the worst thing that has happened is that these girls are marked. Some of the efforts we made to get them reintegrated, or some of the information we got about their reintegration, is really painful. Their children are labeled Boko Haram children. They are not necessarily wanted in marriages because they're Boko Haram wives. There's even an organization in Maiduguri that is working with them, trying to reintegrate them and remove the stigma. So, yes, government has to remain accountable. We as advocates have to remain speaking. You as the media needs to keep it on, on the front banner. And we need to have the parents also join us, beyond their pain.
I think on that note, we should go on a short break and resume thereafter. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it is 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. And our guest today is Hajia Saudatu Mahdi, the head of RAPA, a long-standing advocate of women and their rights. Hajia, we were talking about the fallout of both the Boko Haram insurgency and more recently what is happening near your own home, that's in the northwest. And I don't know, the women appear to be harder hit in all this, and especially now with what is happening in the northwest, because you have instances of women being abducted, women being raped, and all sorts of heinous things happening. Are you involved in trying to help women to cope with what they found themselves in, or are you not?
Yes, RAPA as an entity is working in different ways to support women who have been affected either by insurgency or the fallout of even the natural disasters of flood, community conflicts, and so on. In 2019, we were concerned with the expressions around, sex for food in camps, particularly in the Northeast, and we undertook a research to validate or to, dismiss that, and we truly found it is a reality. Also, a lot of work we do is around empowering them in three regards. Economic empowerment is not enough without the psychological empowerment. The psychological empowerment for a woman to first realize that this is her lot. The second is that she could also move out of it, or she could live beyond it. And then thirdly, what does she do and how does she become a semi-normal person? Because you can never be normal, Malam, when your husband is slaughtered in front of you, when you lose all your livelihood, when your children, you don't know where they are. And so what we try to do, first of all, is to get their humanity and dignity back. A lot of them are in camps, and they are given empowerment, economic empowerment, so that at least they have something to procure both for themselves and their children. The second is the psychosocial support. We do this in collaboration with experts in the field to really bring them out and help them towards closure. But closure without my husband, closure without my children is difficult. However, we keep these women to understand that now they are household heads. For us in northern Nigeria, it is ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa. And a woman may never have known how to even earn a living. Probably she was lucky to get a sheltered life of a husband, responsible husband, and suddenly she's exposed. She has to fend for herself. She has to fend for her children. So even that shock of a change in livelihood, in lifestyle, is something that we help them to manage. The other thing we also help them is to organize. A lot of times you find in camps and in settlements and host communities, these women are dispersed and also like everyone unto himself. Israel. So.
But what do you do in like the Northwest, where so many villages at the moment, they can hardly sleep?
Yes.
Some have been emptied because people.
I'm just coming back from Katsina about 6-7 days ago, under the auspices of the Nigerian Victim Support Fund.
And what did you find out?
We found the reality you speak to of ransacked and sacked villages, women and children, and men in different positions of aboard. You also found abuses happening even within the structure of support that is being put around them. We also realized that we have a time bomb on our hands. The number of children who are like, unaccompanied, as they are termed in this kind of situation, the number of
because
orphans.
They've lost both parents?
Yes, they've lost either both parents, or the parents are somewhere and they are somewhere. So they're called unaccompanied. And then there are those who are clearly orphans, people who know that their parents have been killed or abducted. So those ones, we have a responsibility first to organize and reconnect. But the state governments are the ones responsible, and then philanthropists and advocates and international organizations are out there also trying to help. But in the Northwest, one thing we have found is that the governments are not very keen on formal camps.
Say, how do you deal with this? Because the governments in the Northeast seems to think that formal camps are not so good, that they create a dependency, and that is why most of them do not want established camps. And
that's the Northwest.
The displaced people are more like within the communities.
Yes. You see, the problem with formal camps, like you have pointed out, it creates dependency, entitlement, and then it really erodes them of that humanity to be themselves. And so they get open to abuses, or they become, abusers themselves. So whereas the governments of Northwest are very clear about their intentions for formal camps, they have no option but to look through, settlements, host communities. So I know that one of the plans in some of the states is to, transfer them into communities. But you know also that will have a long-term issue come time.
Especially because even the people to be paid themselves are very poor.
Yes.
How can they support somebody else who has
One of the
else?
fallouts in the work we did in the Northeast, Malam, is where we had foster parents for these children. Because in every settlement and camp you go, children are the highest numbers of population in the camps. So when we paired them with families for fostering, we had to also take responsibility for some of the children of that family. Otherwise, it's like you've come with privileges, and then it's like a leech onto
someone who is hardly
absolutely
able to feed.
So it's a very dynamic thing, Malam. It's very dynamic. The unfortunate thing is that this thing has happened. It is happening, and there doesn't seem to be much that can be said about its ending. Even if it ends today, the trauma, the losses, and the trust deficit that has, because the recent developments shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in communities.
In communities, yes.
Just the same way as we had Boko Haram embedded in communities, in their families and so on. Now we have abductors, having to be serviced by informants who are living within communities. So you really want to wonder, even if it stops today, how do we, get back the fabric of trust, social fabric of trust? How do we also get to move beyond the pains that were incurred upon each other? I mean, we have unleashed between each other. So for governments in the Northwest, my appeal is that much as we would not want formal camps, we should be able to find avenues of strengthening host communities whose infrastructure and means and livelihoods are already overstretched. Is it relatives? Is it philanthropy? Whatever you are doing, the little you have is now overstretched. So maybe we need new urban settlements where people can settle with some decency, and then the encumbrances around issues of land and so on. I mean, land.
But there is also the complication of security. I mean, even big towns are not so secure.
They are not secured. They are not secured. But when you look at the geography in the Northwest and in the Northeast, the spaces, because I hear now they don't want us to say ungoverned spaces, the spaces that are there allows this criminality to thrive. Because before one community, kind of alerts another community, right, that community may have been so. But within urban settings, there is a way town planners have a way of designing it. It's not just coming clog into town, but there is a way town planners speak about it. And I know that there were arrangements for that around Maiduguri, Damaturu, Potiskum, to see how do we stretch out. We are blessed with land at least.
Yes.
How do we stretch out and ensure that, this congestion that is happening because everybody has come can be eased off, people settled with some dignity, people settled without possible recurrence of tensions around the resources that they have to share.
And how does all these upheavals affect the already very poor record that we have of maternal mortality, especially? I reckon it will be grim.
It's not only grim, but it's deadly. Because ordinarily, the facility for a woman to get safe delivery is far away removed from her. I remember the BBC program that showcased some women, I think it's in Jigawa, who had to contribute to buy a vehicle that ferries them to. I also know of the story from around Africa, where, and we have tried that model with the National Union of Road Transport Workers, being able to direct their members to pick a pregnant woman wherever they see her and ferry her to the next hospital or the next facility. So maternal mortality, infant mortality are just no longer figures that we even want to speak to, because it's obvious. Even in peace, how many people were dying, 100 to 100,000 and so on and so forth. So it's deadly. It's an erosion on our human capital. But it's so sad that I usually say it in Hausa, karaya ce ta tadda targaɗe. That is, there's an existing pain, and then you add up another onto it, you know.
But are you not looking at the opportunity of elections, maybe to get advocates, that is, to get some women who understand the pains of women to get into the political process? I don't know. I mean, of late, the only female governor in the is in the northeast, and then even her own case has been thrown out by the court. So how does the coming election look to you from the perspective of your advocacy?
Frankly, the coming election is really, we are sad. We are sad because the writing on the wall seems to say to us that we may even be worse off. As we speak, between the aspirants, I mean the numbers of aspirants for House of Reps and Senate. In the Senate seats, I think we have 9% aspiring. Aspiring. They are not yet at the ballot box. Yes. Then we have also 8 point something at House of Representatives, meaning that in the best case scenario, we may end up with maybe 50% of those figures making it at the ballot box.
So are we regressing?
We are regressing, we are regressing, we are regressing. And this is also the nexus of our campaigns right now in terms of the integrity of Nigeria's election. Is it an election that is just run on numbers and ballots just to say we have fulfilled our righteousness of moving from one government to the other? Or is it really the voices of Nigerians saying, we want you to lead us or we don't want you to lead us? We have a project right now in RAPA running on improving electoral integrity and accountability. And one of the things we are doing is we're empowering women's voices to collectively work with other marginalized groups, persons with disabilities, youth, albinos, all the marginalized, usually marginalized group, which again is a population of women and youth, to really speak and push back. And some of the early results we are getting, if you remember what happened in the Anambra elections, that's the women of Ebenebe who actually stood down money that was given to them to elect. They said, if what we elect is bad, it's our choice, but you cannot give us money and induce us. So one of the things we really are working on is to find the voices of women to push back on corruption, to push back on inducements, and to push back on voter buying and selling.
Quite a laudable objective there.
Yes.
But I'm afraid we've come to the end of our allotted time.
Okay, thank you so much
for coming on the program.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Viewers, we've come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.